There is no conceivable justification in any ethical system that I'm aware of, Christian, Jewish, Muslim, Buddhist, for doing this. All the major moral systems we live with, or nearly all of them, tell us that there's a solidarity amongst us as human beings, that those of us in need have a claim upon those of us who are in a position to meet those needs without sacrificing ourselves. And yet the bill that makes all of these cuts, I need to make it clear to people, that's the same bill that has in it a provision to maintain the greatest tax cut for corporations and the rich in American history, which was passed in Trump's first presidency in 2017. It had a sunset provision that it would that these cuts would expire this year, 2025. And so this new bill carries in it the perpetuation of that temporary tax cut for corporations and the rich, and adds a bunch more tax cuts. So let's be clear. We're going to take money away from medical care for the people you just summarized, mostly working people, genuinely needy people, and all the rest. We're going to take money away from them, a lot, causing many of them to miss out on medical care, to be sicker than they would otherwise have to be, and to die sooner than they otherwise would have to, in order to give the richest corporations and people a continuation of a tax cut they shouldn't have got in the first place, and additional tax cuts. It really boggles the mind when you see what this is about. No wonder Republicans are being screaming at their representatives at town meetings, which they've canceled all over the country because of what's happening. No wonder Iowa Senator Joni Ernst has, how shall I put it, destroyed her own reputation for the rest of her life, and certainly for the rest of her political life. Her statements will follow her forever because of their crudeness, because of their ignorance, but most of all, because of their straight out, and there's no other word for this, fascistic attitude towards her fellow citizens. We all die eventually. Wow. You're going to die sooner. And I say that as a senator who's got one of the best free healthcare programs available on this planet for senators and representatives in Washington. I mean, the United States has the most expensive medical care system in the world. If there were any place in the world where you had to help the poor access such costly health care, which of course they cannot afford, this is the country. You're dealing with a sleazy politician, what used to be called correctly a country club Republican, who lives in a world of cocktails and relaxation, occasionally going into the mess and the mass of us people and explaining to us who we should have as our savior and explaining to us who we should listen to. The tooth fairy is the equivalent in her mind of the fear of dying because you don't have access. This is beyond being tone deaf. This is beyond being out of the loop. This is another step, and I'm going to use a word I very rarely use again. This is fascism. You no longer understand other people as being like you, people who want to live, who want to be there with and for their loved ones, who want to be part of a functioning community, who want to have their health. and who ask of a society, give me at least these basics. I'm ready to work. I'm ready to do my share of the responsibility. And I will never treat other people as Senator Ernst just did, as if their death and anxiety about their death, a perfectly reasonable anxiety given what we're talking about, is the equivalent of the tooth fairy. This is a person who can condemn others to death because in her brain, it doesn't count. She has disconnected herself from the human condition. That's what fascists do when the conditions become so extreme that they lose their humanity. We wonder how people can treat one another this way, kill each other in large numbers with no sense that there could and should be an alternative way to solve our problems other than this, because then we become like the animal kingdom, which we thought we were a little bit kind of developed from. It's horrible to watch. And that such a person should be, to do what she did with that remark was catastrophic. To follow it up by making it worse, and doing it in a cemetery, so it's just, it reminds me of the worst examples of German, Italian, Spanish fascisms when you had this kind of behavior in which there, but for the grace of God, a statement that comes out of the Christian religion is something they don't have any relationship to anymore. The irony, the hypocrisy of ending with my Lord and Savior. That's what she is, the Christian who can mouth the words, but has no connection anymore to the very honest idea that lies behind them. And I do, if you allow me, to say a word about the cynicism, saying this is about avoiding people who cheat the system. My God. You know what that shows you? They've got nothing. So they come up with this because this is the kind of thing you say when you've got nothing to say about it. Every system has people who cheat it and game it. Millions of Americans game the tax system in this country 10 ways. Should that mean we don't have a tax system? Of course not. Millions of people cheat at every conceivable opportunity. We don't cut out programs. Are there people who inappropriately take advantage? Yes. And you know something? Every bureaucracy knows that, and every bureaucracy has within it officers, people, and procedures to avoid that as best they can. But to use it suddenly as a basis for denying people access to health care by the millions because some cheat, well, we know what that is. That's the excuse that fascists use when they kill whole villages because somebody in the village resisted. We understand what that's about. That's a kind of terrorism. And that's what we're victims of in this country by what is going on here. And it's a statement that this country no longer has the capacity to take care of its people. You know, this country became great because it took in waves of immigrants, year after year, decade after decade. Most of the people watching this program, listening to this program, can trace their ancestors back to some immigrants that came to the United States and found a way to work and earn an income and get an education. And it made this country great. Now that we are no longer doing that, now that we have a government whose number one priority is to deport immigrants, let me be the economist for a moment. You know what that means? It means we have lost the capacity to absorb these people, to find a way to tap their creativity, their hard work, their contributions, the way we once were able to. The deportation of immigrants, like the abandonment of poor people who now can't get medical care in this country that claims it's the richest in the world. I mean, it isn't anymore, but it still claims it. It tells you that what we're seeing is a shrinking of American capitalism. And when the empire of this country declines as it is, and when this capitalism declines as it is, nothing is more typical of a declining empire than seeing that the people at the top, the richest, the most powerful, they're the ones who can hold on to the riches the empire gave them. They're the ones who can hold on to their position because that's what their position gives them, power and influence. And so they offload the costs of decline on those who can't protect themselves. Immigrants without the legal right to be here. Poor people without enough money to access medical care. That's all that's happening here. A horrible turning in on itself and against itself by a declining capitalism, which will continue to do so unless and until the mass of the people understand what we're seeing and saying and change the system. There is no alternative. Here's the irony. Margaret Thatcher invented the TINA. There is no alternative. She meant it for capitalism. She meant it as if socialism couldn't be an alternative. We are living through an age where a transition to socialism is the only remaining alternative unless we are prepared to suffer. Those 8.6 million people, Nicole, that you referred to, who will lose access, they will become this generation's beggars, desperados, people with nothing to lose, people who will change the face of large and small cities across this country. This is a terrible step in a terrible process, and we better wake up and face what it is before it hurts us beyond repair. The fact that that we are hitting the world with tariffs, Mr. Trump is making the whole world angry at us, and they are now in the process of retaliating. That's cutting off the market for the farming industry of this country, which is a major exporter of corn and wheat and all the products that come from agriculture. That's very bad for the farmers. Now you're taking away the subsidy for the SNAP program. I mean, you're making it worse for these people. You're also depriving large numbers of people of an access to decent diet. That's going to make them sick. That's going to make them go to the emergency room in the hospital where they still have some access. You're going to have to spend much more in the hospital to cover the. That's why you take care of people, because it's cheaper. Now, why would an economy in trouble, and you're right about the OECD, I want to make it clear, the OECD didn't think the U.S. economy was going to do well this year as late as March, and now they have ratcheted down much more because of the tariff. And by the way, China is also suffering, but it will still grow in 2025 and 2026 3 times faster than the United States, or nearly so. So we are not changing the world economy. It is still the decline of the U.S. and the rise of China. Is not fixing any of those problems, but here's what it's doing. It's taking care of those at the top. They get a tax cut. a big one. They get the continuation of the 2017. They are doing well. The farmers, screw them. The poor people, screw them. Only a system that's going down would be that self-destructive, that short-sighted, that unable anymore to solve its problems. And so holding on, not realizing that the more you divide this society into the haves and the have-nots, the sooner the have-nots will stop tolerating it. And then what?